Hey, this is Dylan from EatWild, and today I want to talk about still hunting. Still hunting is a technique that I use often while I'm hunting white-tailed deer, mule deer, occasionally when I'm sneaking up on a bull elk. And it's a technique where I'm trying to work through uh, ungulate habitat in a way that I'm maximizing my coverage. So I'm being quite hidden, and I'm moving quietly through the forest so that I can get the drop on an animal. I say drop is what it means is I can see the animal before it sees me, or at least I see the animal before it takes off from the country and I lose sight of it. So it's a way that I often zone in on an animal and get that critical shot. So there's a number of things around how to still hunt critters that I think are important I can pass along to you. So the first thing is that in order to still hunt, you got to pick the right piece of terrain that is advantageous to you as the hunter. I'm looking for a piece of habitat or terrain that's got a slope on it. And I'm looking for the slope because it allows me the opportunity to side hill across the slope. Now, the important part is still hunting is all about creating vantage over the next little piece of country. So as you sneak up and over a little ridge line and you're looking down the other side into a gully, you have an opportunity to look down at that gully before your physical, your smell, your sound, or your silhouette has been exposed to that new piece of country. So the benefit of side hilling along is that as you side hill along, you open up new country or new vantage points along the way. I pick out the ideal terrain that suits my needs to be able to side hill across. The next piece is really important, is I'm looking for habitat that is conducive for both for me to hunt it as well as the deer wanting to hang out in it. So I'm looking for a mix of like cover and openness. I like a more open area, of course, because I can see more. And if I can see more, I could likely see the deer more likely. However, if it's too open, the deer won't feel comfortable. And the deer will be able to see you well before you're able to get into within range of seeing them. So, for example, you have a hard time sneaking up on a deer in an open field because they can see well before you would be able to get to within shooting distance or whatnot of the animal. So in a piece of country like this, there's natural openings that go to between 60 and 80 yards. There's lots of varied understory here that creates lots of food as well as lots of cover for deer, and they feel comfortable here. But there's still enough openings here that I can actually sneak along and look into the openings and hopefully find deer or parts of deer. Now that's another important thing. As I'm still hunting through the forest, I seldom see a whole deer silhouetted as I'm looking into the forest. What I'll see is deer parts. I'll see a deer leg, I'll see an antler, I'll see an ear, an eye, the white patch underneath their throat. Those are all cues that I'm looking for. And so often I'll just see part of a deer, and that'll help me key in, and I'll find the rest of him through my binoculars. So I'm looking for that nice balance in habitat. And as you can see around me, there's open pockets and there's closed areas. I'm thinking that this is a good area for me to start hunting. So I'm going to work my way across the slope, side hilling, and I talk about some other techniques as I go as to what I'm trying to do as I'm working the terrain. At all times when I'm still hunting is trying to cover up my silhouette. So in other words, stay in cover. So whenever I stop, I'm going to stop next to a tree. And this does a couple things. One is that if I'm standing behind a tree, if a deer sees any movement, it will be interested in what the movement is, but it might not spook out of the country. It's going to want to get all the information it can before it decides to leave. So if I break up my silhouette behind this tree, I'll get a few more opportunities to see that deer. The other thing I like about being behind a tree is I can use it as a rest to look through my binoculars, which is key. The other thing is, if I have an opportunity to shoot, I've got a tree, rest, and I'm ready to shoot. As I go, I'm always going to look for a route where I can maximize my cover. So in other words, it's really tempting for me to walk out in the open where the trail is down here, but I'm going to stick closer to these trees, even though it might be a little noisier. I think the benefit is that I've got my silhouettes broken up, I've got a tree to use as a rest, and hopefully I can see a deer from there. Now I spent a lot of time looking through my binoculars because the binoculars actually help filter out the depth of field that I'm looking through. So I can actually see down into that clearing down there. So if there was a deer there, I get the spot on it for sure. When I'm approaching an opening, I like to use a big tree like this. Covers up my silhouette, and then I can peek around the tree. Once I've glassed all the pockets, I'll carry on to my next tree. Now, I'll often plan my route so that I can avoid anything that's particularly noisy bits and pieces of ground cover. And I'll make my way to the next tree that So I spend most of my time hunting, still hunting. I like to be on the move. I like to be covering ground and learning something as I go. Having said that, probably the most effective way to have a successful hunt is just to sit in one spot where you've got good vantage in a spot that you know holds deer, elk, moose, whatever it is you're hunting. Having said that, I don't have the patience to sit in a tree stand or put too much time in a blind. So my preference is I still hunt. I still hunt from one really deery spot to the next deery spot, and I spend some time sitting in those deery spots as I go. And that's how I really enjoy hunting. So in this hunt, we're really covering some new ground. We haven't hunted in this location, so it's important that we get the lay of the land, try to figure out where those high density deer spots are. And the only way that we're going to figure that out is by covering some ground. However, I want to kill an animal. In order to do that, I need to be super stealthy, super quiet, and I need to put all the elements in my favor. So that's why I'm still hunting through the forest. So I get the best of both worlds for myself. New country, but I'm quiet enough that I can get the drop on an animal. Now there's other couple of key things that I haven't mentioned. Number one is you got to be quiet. And that helps when you've got ideal conditions, when the ground is wet and not crunchy. When there's a bit of snow on the ground, can actually help dampen things down. Too much snow can make things really noisy too. But you got to make every effort to be careful how you place your foot down on every single step. And you'll eventually identify different ground cover types that are quieter than others. So I'll be sticking to the moss in this ecosystem. It's particularly noisy in this forest right now. So I'm looking for moss and grass patches to step on and avoiding where there's pine cones and needles. The other thing that's super important is that anytime you're hunting, you got to be aware where the wind's blowing. So I'm always hunting into the wind. The wind is blowing this way, so I'll be hunting that way. If critters get your smell, they're going to be gone. If critters hear you, or if they see some movement, they're going to be curious and they're going to look really carefully and try to figure out what that is that's made that noise. And then they won't bolt until they've figured out what it is. If they can smell you, guaranteed they figured out what you are and they're already gone. So always hunt in the wind, be quiet, take advantage of the cover, and try to create advantage for yourself, and you'll have success. Now, the most important tip about this is you have to believe that you're going to see deer for it to work. So I'll often be hunting, like earlier today, I had hunted some ground. I spent the better part of 3 hours without seeing a deer, and I was feeling like I wasn't in a deery area. All of a sudden, there's an animal, jumps out of its bed. I wasn't practicing my still hunting techniques. I wasn't believing in myself, and I missed an opportunity to see that deer. For the rest of the day, I put my still hunting technique to work, and I saw several deer and had a successful hunt. So keep up the good work. It's hard to do. It takes patience. It takes time to develop the skills, but it'll pay off if you believe in yourself. Anyways, good luck out there still hunting.